Hello Commander community, I'm Paul the Commander Theorist, and today marks day 2 of our Commander 2018 spoiler season. We've got a lot of really neat new cards to look at today, so let's waste no time and dive right into it. So we have a new Jund-colored Spider Legend, Fantas the Warweaver. A 5/5 with Vigilance and Reach, Fantas forces every creature to attack each combat if able. Whenever a creature attacks you or a Planeswalker you control, Fantas will get a +1/+1 counter placed on him. This is a really powerful ability. This will trigger every time a creature attacks you, so for each creature attacking you, he'll get an additional counter. This can result in one hell of a large spider, ready to strike back on your turn for quite a hefty amount of damage. And while this really doesn't fit into the theme that the rest of the deck might be going for with lands matter, it certainly does present a nasty new potential for Spider Tribal. Xanshas Sleeper Agent is a 5/5 for 3 mana, which sounds pretty strong except the part where when you cast her, you don't get to keep her. She gets put under the control of an opponent, she cannot attack you, but she does have to attack each combat if able. She also has an activated ability where for 3 mana, her controller loses 2 life, and the one who activates the ability gets to draw a card. I find this really funny in a bit of a sadistic way. All the other players at the table can take advantage of giving this creature to an opponent, and then they all gang up on them to get card draw and shock them. Fury Storm is another one of those Commander Storm cards, which gets you a copy for each time you've cast your commander this game. You can then copy target instant or sorcery spell, choosing new targets for each copy. This can be bonkers if you've managed to uptick enough copy triggers. While I don't see this being super useful in decks like the Lands Matter deck I believe this comes in, I certainly think this is going to be useful for a possible Storm style deck. Ancient Stone Idol is a 10 mana 12/12 that has flash, and it also costs 1 less mana for each attacking creature. The point is to drop this as you're being attacked as a ginormous defender. It also has trample, and if it dies, you get to create a 6/12 token with trample. So this is really nice. It serves as a very potent hand trap, and if it dies, it'll leave behind another creature that is also pretty darn strong. And I also like that this is colorless, making it playable in any deck I want to experiment with it in. Windgrace's Judgment lets you pick any number of opponents to destroy one target non-land permanent that player controls. This reminds me slightly of Decimate, except you get to pick and choose whether or not you destroy a permanent owned by a certain player. So this can bring around a lot of politics in the game, as you can spare a player's permanents for something in return. Heck, this would be neat to copy a few times with that Fury Storm. Gyrus, Waker of Corpses, is a Hydra legendary, which is cool. It costs X and Jund, and it enters the battlefield with a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the amount of mana spent to cast it. So right off the bat, this is almost an identical ability to Wrath of the Wild, being an excellent mana sink as a commander where paying more mana to cast it is actually for the better. Whenever it attacks, you can exile a target creature from your graveyard that has less power than Gyrus to then create a copy of that card that's attacking. This is a neat take on recursion, not quite recurring creatures from the graveyard, but making extra use of those that are in a graveyard for one last hurrah. I feel its two abilities work nicely together, if not in a really weird way I don't think we've seen before, but I would certainly liken this to a potential field control commander using taxation style effects like Grave Pact and Dictate of Erebos to ensure that the boards are clear when he swings. Whiptongue Hydra is next, is a 4/4 for 6 with reach, and it kills off all flying creatures upon entering the battlefield. It then gets a +1/+1 counter on it for each creature destroyed this way. Basically, Bane of Progress but for flyers. It's a little bit situational if you ask me, especially for 6 mana, though it does solve an issue I find a lot of my green decks being unable to handle the flying variety of enemy pricks. Also, I like that it's basically a chameleon Hydra, so I guess it's okay. Reality Scramble is a 4 mana sorcery that puts the target permanent that you own on the bottom of the library, and then you reveal cards off the top of your library until one shares a card type with it. That card gets put to the battlefield and the rest go to the bottom of your library. It also has Retrace, allowing you to pitch a land to the graveyard in addition to casting cost to play it from the graveyard. So I'm not super big on this, as I see there being quite a bit of chance to it. I do see also that it does work towards getting you land fixing by sending a land to the deck, and with the lands matter theme having a lot of focus on graveyard laden cards, it will work nicely in tandem with it. But I feel like in most decks this won't see too much play unless it clearly is better than other spells that would otherwise fill its place. Blood Tracker is a 2/2 vampire wizard with flying, which has an ability to cost 1 black mana and 2 life to put a +1/+1 counter on him. So we can channel our life and our black mana into pumping it up, and then when it leaves the battlefield you get to draw a card for each counter on him. It's not bad. It does detract from what I've accepted as the mainstream vampire playstyle of a lot of little creatures or control shenanigans, but I guess that given the amount of life gain possible in some vampire decks, this might serve some purpose. Loyal Guardian is a 5-mana 4/4 with trample. At the beginning of combat of your turns, if you control your commander, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. This thing is nuts in a deck like Rayhan and Ishai or Agave. I actually feel like I like this in the same way as Cathar's Crusade, only the counter flow from this card is a little less intense. Still a great card. I do look forward to brewing with this included. Next is Nesting Dragon, a 5-mana 5/4 with flying and landfall. Whenever a land enters your battlefield, you get to create a 0/2 Dragon Egg. You literally create Dragon Egg. That when it dies, it becomes a 2/2 flying dragon with fire breathing. I actually really like this card as it costs really low for what the value you get from it. I would almost have expected this to be a 7-drop. And in a token deck, this kind of ability can get out of hand really quickly. I will really enjoy playing this in a deck like Wraith the Awakener, using some token doublers to really get the dragon tones flowing. Loyal Subordinate is 3/1 for 3 with Menace. It also has Lieutenant, so if you control your commander at the beginning of combat on your turn, each opponent loses 3 life. This isn't a bad ability, but I just feel it's extremely fragile at 1 toughness and will likely get pinged off or chump blocked before it can really start spreading some damage around. We're almost there with today's spoilers. It's like magical Christmas. Loyal Apprentice is a 2-drop 2/1 with haste. At the beginning of combat, again, if you control your commander, you create a 1/1 flying Thopter token with flying and haste. I love this card. It's reasonably costed, it can come out early, and it synergizes greatly with the sheer amount of token production that this deck seems to be going for. Again, it's a little frail, but regardless, it's less frail than the Thopter tokens, and I feel like it's going to make a pretty decent splash in a Thopter/Servo token deck. Lord Winggrace is the cover card for the Land Matters deck. He's a 5 loyalty, 5-drop Jund Planeswalker. You can +2 him to pitch a card to draw a card, and if the discarded card was a land, you get to draw an additional card. You can -3 him to return up to 2 target lands from your graveyard to the battlefield, and his ultimate, which I'm sure my wife will love, you get to destroy up to 6 target non-land permanents, and then create 6 2/2 Forest Walking Cat tokens. Good lord, this is a land destruction nightmare. I'd often wondered if we'd ever see the dark day when land destruction and lands engraved would be given its own support in the form of a commander. Well, here it is. Lord Winggrace really feels like he wants to drop lands into the graveyard, so for all you Gitrog monster fans, you might have a new kitty to play with. And given that Crucible of Worlds just got itself a reprint, I seriously feel like we have got some really good cards to snatch up right now for this deck. So that brings to close our second day of Commander 2018 spoilers. What do you think of the cards we've seen so far? Any decks strike you as a particular must-have? For me, I still want to know what kind of goodies we're getting in the enchantment deck, but for now, remember to like this video and share it with others to let them know it's worth a watch. Subscribe with notifications turned on to stay up to date with future uploads, and as always, I'll see all you guys, gals, and NB pals next video.